on, everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. Happy Hump Day, happy Whiskey Wednesday, whatever you want to call it. Listen, it's been one heck of a week. We took the Sunday scaries right into the Monday scaries after the Super Bowl. Monday was Valentine's Day, so we had to deal with that as well. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely want to pour something up. I'm actually out for Valentine's Day dinner probably right about now with my wife. We do it tonight instead of on Valentine's Day. Save a little bit of money, time, and aggravation of all of the cars and everybody trying to get out and about. But everybody knows before we get started on all of that and this benchmark foolproof, time for the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. Woo, that's hot. So first of all, if you're new here, welcome. I appreciate you stopping by. Click that subscribe button if you like the content. Click that like button if you like me even more. We're trying to help that YouTube algorithm push these videos just a little bit more. If you're not new here, welcome back. I appreciate you stopping back again. Today, we have Benchmark Foolproof. This is obviously coming out of Buffalo Trace Distillery. This is mash bill number 1, and we're going to talk about mash bills from Buffalo Trace during our Bourbon Bomb of the Week. But for right now, just know that this is apparently less than 10% rye, which means it's definitely not on that higher rye end. Now, I'm still trying to define high rye in my mind. Again, over 10% is that high rye. I think it still needs to be in that 15 to 20% range, but people say maybe 13% is high rye. So whatever you think is high rye, let me know in the comment section below. I'd really appreciate it, just so I can get a better basis of what we should distinguish high rye as. But for this one being less than 10%, we can definitely tell you that this is not a high rye. But we're going to start with the 3 rules: price, taste, drinkability. And we always start with drinkability. This comes in at 125 proof. And this is interesting because it definitely drinks hot, but then I've got to remember this is a 125 proof bourbon. So how hot does it actually drink? We're going to take another sip though, and we'll give you an answer on that real quick. So I'm not going to lie to you. Whew, almost choked you up. This does drink hot. And we can make sure that we know that it's not the rye proof because this is a lower rye mash bill. So for this to drink as hot as it does, it's not going to get the best score on drinkability because I start to compare it to stuff like other things like Stag Jr., like Booker's, which is up there in that 120, 130 proof. Jack Daniel's Coy Hill, which is something that I'd probably compare this to on the heat index, at least when I first had my Jack Daniel's Coy Hill. It sipped very hot. Now, I drank this the other night. It sipped hot. I wanted to let it open up because I know it is probably a younger, a higher proof, and a cheaper bottle of bourbon. So I wanted to let it open up. So I drank some. I let it sit for a little bit. We poured up a glass the other night, let that sit for a little bit, and it still drank a little hot. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's overwhelming for 125 proof. It probably should have a little kick. It doesn't have any rye behind it. Well, less than 10%. So we know it's not like a real rye spice that we're getting, although I do get some spice on this. We'll talk about that during taste, but drinkability-wise, I think I'm going to give it an average or below average score. I'm going to give it like a 7.02 when it comes to drinkability on this. That being said, let's transition over to taste on this. Now, taste, the reason we do price at the end is because we want to talk about how good drinkability is and how good taste is, and does that represent the price tag. But I also do want to mention the price tag on this at $25 because that's also going to reflect back to taste. For a $25, and I'll say that again, for a $25 bottle of bourbon, this drinks very tasteful. I think it has a lot of flavors. I think the flavors are pretty good. I don't think that they're outstanding. I don't think it's anything new. You're not getting anything that you haven't had before. I think it's and this is interesting. So when I go over my tasting notes, right, I drink the bottle. I try and figure out what I can figure out. Then I'll go online and I'll look up people that I trust, right? I'll look up a bunch of YouTubers that I trust. I look up like a Fred Minnick review. I'll look up Jason Mash and Drum, Junkies. We know all the big guys. I'll see if somebody like Stuff and Whiskey or the Bourbon Band or Black Bourbon Family or the Bourbon Judge or Scott from My Bourbon Journey, Multicasking. There's a bunch of people that I trust their reviews, and I'll go on and I'll listen to them. And I don't always agree with them. You don't always agree with me. That's fine as well. But I'll go on, I'll listen, I'll see if I can start to pick out notes that maybe they got that I didn't. Then I'll go on to something like Breaking Bourbon. Breaking Bourbon's awesome at breaking down. The flavor notes and everything are awesome, but at the same time, they'll tell you where it's from. They'll tell you any interesting things about the distilling process, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I get a lot of my age statements, if it has one, mash bills, if it has one, all that kind of stuff. This is non-age stated, by the way. Then I like to, and this is where things get a little out of hand, I'll go on to Reddit, right? Reddit is a great place for verbal YouTube videos. So Reddit doesn't like the video side of things as much, but people will put the reviews and their opinions on there. And I was reading through Reddit on this one, and somebody posted a very long, in-depth review, and it was awesome, and I loved it. And then somebody commented on it, and they said Stag the Third. And what they meant by that was you have George T. Stagg, You have Stag Junior, which is now going to be just Stag, and then you have what would be considered Stag the Third. Now, George T. Stag and Stag Junior are both mash bill number one coming out of Buffalo Trace. So for this, could this just be a younger version of what should be Stag Junior? Maybe it's not aged as long and it's on a different part of the rick house. Maybe it's not the highest shelf or the lowest shelf, whatever shelf happens to produce the best stuff. Is that what we're getting here? Because I do get similar flavor profiles to the Stag that I had. Stag has a little bit more cherry, but it's got that heat, right? It's got that 125 proof behind it. It's got the cinnamon, the allspice, the caramel, the vanillas, maybe a little less cherry. I don't really get too much cherry on this, but I think that's balanced. I think that's basically worked out by the heat on this. But it is, I'm not going to say it's not a younger Stag Junior. I'm not going to say it's the same quality as Stag Junior, but I'm also going to tell you that for $25 compared to $60, it's kind of right in line with what I would get flavor-wise on a very, very, very young Stag Junior. And I haven't had George T. Stag before. I've heard nothing but good things. It obviously varies from line to line or year to year, batch to batch. But at the same time, it's an interesting concept to think about. And when I saw that comment, and I read that, I thought to myself, it could be. Now, am I going to give this the same score that I gave Stag Junior on drinkability and taste? Absolutely not. Taste-wise, I think, again, it's above average when it comes to a $25 bottle of bourbon, but it's nothing special. Taking price out of the equation for right now, I'm going to drop it down at like a 7.64 when it comes to taste on this. And last but not least, that's going to get us into price on this. And at $25, you really can't be mad at this bottle. So let's talk about it. I always bring up comparables, right? $20 bottle of bourbon at 125 proof. How many do you know? I don't know too many, and I was trying to look on my shelf here how many of these bottles are $25 or less, or we'll even say $30 or less, and give you that proof point, And there's none. I don't think I can find one $25 bottle of bourbon on here that has that proof point. You've got like Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, which is 100, so we're still a little low there. And so you start to compare these to what? Now we're talking proof-wise, we got to compare it to a Booker's or a Stag Junior or something up there in that cash strength. But then all of those, you're talking $55, $60, $90. So then we compare it to other things that are $20 or $25. You've got like Wild Turkey 101, for example. You got the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. You've got Early Times Bottled in Bond at $20. And you start to say, is this worse than those bottles? And I don't think it is taste-wise. And you get a little bit more proof. Yeah, you get a little bit more heat. But I bet you if those bottles were 125 proof rather than 101 proof or 100 proof, they would probably have a little bit more heat behind them as well, just because they don't have the aging process to take some of that ethanol flavor or ethanol heat out of the process. So this is a tough one to compare for me because I haven't experienced a comparable before. 125 proof, it should be a Booker's, it should be a Stag Junior, but the $25 price point, it should be a Wild Turkey, it should be an Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. And so for me, I kind of have to find a middle ground. For $25, it drinks hot. I also think it drinks fantastically. I'm not going to be mad at the price on this. I'm going to give it, this is tough. I think I put it in the nines, 9.01. We'll keep it right up, 9.00. I always go like 0.01, 0.02. 9.00 is where we're going to put this on price. But listen, while I had these scores up, let's send it over to this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week and learn a little bit more about Buffalo Trace's mash bills, because there's a lot of things I didn't know. Cheers. So we're going to stick with this angle just for a little bit. By the way, if you're new here, I used to change the angle up. If you're old, welcome back. Welcome to the new angle. Here's the deal. Buffalo Trace has undisclosed mash bills. Now, somebody somewhere found out about these mash bills, whether they put it out themselves. I think now they put it out themselves, but I don't know if somebody released it before that, and now they just go by it. But let's talk about them. They have Buffalo Trace mash bill number 1. By the way, there's only mash bill number 1 and mash bill number 2, so I don't know why they just don't do low rye and high rye, but we'll talk about that another time. Buffalo Trace mash bill number 1 includes, and I'm going to put this on the screen for you. I'm going to try and rattle off the most popular of these. Buffalo Trace bourbons, so all of the Buffalo Trace bourbons, like the kosher rye recipe. You have the E.H. Taylor small batch, single barrel, and barrel proof. You have E.H. Taylor Jr. old fashioned sour mix. You have Warehouse C, C Tornado Surviving, Cured Oak. You have George T. Stag, Stag Jr., 10-year Eagle Rare, 17-year Eagle Rare. You have the whole benchmark, the Old Charter 101. We'll just call it Old Charter in general. The Benchmark Old 8, the Top Floor Small Batch Modded Foolproof and Single Barrel from Benchmark, and then Buffalo Trace White Dog. That is all Buffalo Trace products coming out of mash bill number 1. Now, what else do they have? That's the low rye, by the way, less than 10%. Then they have the high rye mash bill, which is 12 to 15%. So again, they're saying 12% rye is high rye. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's for another day. For that mash bill, they have Ancient Age, Ancient Age, 10-star, Elmer T. Lee, which we have on our shelves, Elmer T. Lee 100-year tribute, Elmer T. Lee commemorative edition, Rock Hill Farms, Blanton Single Barrel, which we have on there, Blanton's Gold, we have a sample of, Blanton Straight from the Barrel, Blanton Special Reserve, and Hancock's President's Reserve Single Barrel. So those are all just mash bill number 2. These are all Buffalo Trace products. I didn't know half of these were Buffalo Trace products. Up until a little while ago, I didn't know Benchmark was a Buffalo Trace product. So if you don't know everything that Buffalo Trace has, don't feel bad. Trust me, I didn't either. Then we have the wheated mash bill. It's unclearly exactly what wheat is used. It's likely up to 15%, but the recipe does not use any rye. And these are your Wellers, right? Your Special Reserve, your Antique, your 12-year, your Foolproof, your Single Barrel, your WLW, William Lure Weller. You have your E.H. Taylor Seasoned Wood, Buffalo Trace White Dog Wheat Mash, Buffalo Trace Kosher Wheat Recipe, Old Van Winkle 10-year, Lot B 12-year, Van Winkle 15, 20, and 23-year. Those are all your wheated mash bills. Then you have your rye mash bills, which are 51% rye. Obviously, you have Sazerac rye we have up on the shelf somewhere, Sazerac rye 18, Thomas H. Handy, Buffalo Trace rye mash, the White Dog, Buffalo Trace Kosher straight rye, and then the Van Winkle Family Reserve rye, obviously. Then you have your high rye mash bills. So these are rye mash bills with no corn, includes just rye and malted barley for your E.H. Taylor straight rye and your E.H. Taylor Jr. barrel proof rye. Then you have your 4-grain, which is the E.H. Taylor 4-grain. And then you have your Amaranth, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the Amaranth mash bill, which is the E.H. Taylor Amaranth Grain of Gods. You have your mash bill blends, which is your E.H. Taylor 18-year marriage, which is a blend of mash bill number 1, mash bill number 2, and the wheated mash bill. Then you have A. Smith Bowman, which is owned by Buffalo Trace, which is Bowman Brothers, which I absolutely love. Didn't know that was Buffalo Trace for the longest time. You have your port barrel finished Bowman, you have your John J. Bowman, which is the single barrel version, and you have your Abraham Bowman limited edition whiskey. All of these coming out of Buffalo Trace at different mash bills, but all the same mash bills. And just because they're the same mash bills, we've talked about this a bunch on the channel, they could be aged longer. Obviously, something like a George T. Stagg, it's going to be in that 14 to 17 or whatever year mark, 14 to 16, I think they say, where Stagg Jr. might be 6 to 8. And then this might be, it's straight bourbon? Straight bourbon, so it's at least 2. So this could be 2 to 3 years old. We don't know, right? They're undisclosed. While the mash bills, we know approximately a rye, we don't know what the rest of it is, right? It could be 60% corn, it could be 51% corn and more malted barley. We just don't know, but it's interesting to see they have the best of the best of the best top shelf stuff that you want from Buffalo Trace that I'm never going to see, I'm never going to get in my life, all the way down to something like Benchmark 8, which is $20 on the shelf or less. And it's all the same mash bill. It just goes to show you about that aging process, about that barreling process, and as well as the blending process, how much can change from one bottle to another and how much price difference it can get from one bottle to another. So that's enough for this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week. Let's send it back over and see what score we got on this. But listen, at the end of the day, Buffalo Trace is going to continue to put out product that people want. People are going to keep hunting for it. It's going to continue to be allocated on these online drops or on special releases in stores. Until that expansion project is really complete, even after that, we still have to wait for the whiskey to age. It's just going to be a while until this isn't highly allocated or highly sought after. And until then, we just have to wait. As for this Benchmark Foolproof, this came in at a 7.88 repeating. We'll call it a 7.89. I think it was 7.886. So we'll call it a 7.89, and not a bad spot for it if you ask me. This falls right in line, like I mentioned before, with your Wild Turkey 101s, with your early times bottled and bonded. I think that's kind of where it deserves to be. If this was on the shelf 24/7, this would definitely be my daily go-to high-proof bourbon. Now, because it's $25 and you have that 125 proof behind it, it makes it interesting. But at the same time, I don't have to go out of my way and pick up a $90 bottle of Booker's or like hunt down a Stag 17 or what's soon to be Stag 18. And it's one of those things that kind of fills a void because you have $60 bottles of barrel proof when you're talking about Larceny or Elijah Craig, or you have $90 bottles of uncut, unfiltered when you're talking about something like Booker's. So I think it fills a void that needs to be filled. It's just not quite there when it comes to availability. But that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Make sure you check me out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. we drop an image of the bourbon that we're going to review. You can go on and try and guess my score. If you guess the closest, I'll give you a shout out on the channel, as well as enter you in a monthly drawing for some cool prizes. We have custom Glencairns. This isn't one of them. hoodies, t-shirts, all kinds of stuff like that. If you want to help support the channel financially, check me out on Patreon. We have some cool stuff for Patreons. If you want to chat with us 24/7, come chat with us on Discord. Both those links in the description below. Always, don't drink and drive, drink responsibly, and please stay healthy, stay happy, stay drinking. Cheers, y'all.